Hello and welcome to this video about principles of design. These principles are guidelines which can make your designs look aesthetic as well as help them to communicate its purpose. Following these principles can generally make your work acceptable to a majority of people. We will start with balance, which gives us a sense of equilibrium. Balance depends on factors such as placement, size, shape, opacity, color, etc. This composition is perfectly balanced around the horizontal as well as vertical axis in terms of shape, size, color, and placement. Here, although the size of the objects are same, the composition is not balanced. A circle occupies lesser area than a square of the same size, so it will have lesser visual weight compared to a square. Hence, here the composition is left heavy. What about this one? Even here, the composition is not balanced. Darker colors are considered to have more visual weight compared to lighter colors. So, this composition is right heavy. There are 4 ways of achieving balance. The first one is horizontal symmetry. The basic placement guide for this type of balance looks like this. There is a dominant object in the middle and smaller elements at the corners. Notice that this composition is symmetric about both the axes. One of the best examples of this type of balance is Taj Mahal. If we look at the plan of Taj Mahal, we realize that it exactly follows horizontal symmetry. In fact, Taj Mahal is known to be symmetric and balanced in many ways. Let's see another example. Although this composition does not have elements at its corners, it is still horizontally balanced as it is symmetric about both axes. Approximate horizontal symmetry is exactly what the name suggests. It consists of rectangular sections placed adjacent to one another. We can observe this type of layout in the user interface of devices such as a laptop. When objects are placed in such a manner that they represent concentric circles, it is called as radial symmetry. A clock is an excellent example of this type of symmetry. Asymmetry basically implies that no object is aligned to one another in terms of placement and size, resulting in an imbalance. Moving on to the next principle of design, which is rhythm. Rhythm can be achieved through repetition of shapes and lines parallel to one another. The same can be done with gradation, and also through repetition of shapes by radiating them. The third principle of design is emphasis. Emphasis directs the reader's eye to the important parts of the composition. This can help in conveying the message quickly. Like in this case, our attention is drawn towards the smaller circle as it is different from everything else. Visual hierarchy is another way to do the same. It defines what element of the composition we see first, which element we see next, and which elements we see last. So there are 3 components of visual hierarchy: dominant, subdominant, and subordinate elements. This slide that you're seeing now also follows visual hierarchy. The title emphasis becomes a dominant element, that is, it is the largest in size, and we see this word first. Following which is a subtitle or the subdominant element, which we see next. And finally, the body text or the subordinate element. The size decreases as we go from dominant to subordinate elements. The next principle is variety, which can be brought out through factors like size, shape, color, etc. Variety can also be brought out by having a large contrast between the elements of the composition. Movement is a principle by which we can direct the reader's eye through the composition. Here, the objects are arranged in such a manner that your eye is guided along this path. Proportions is the major difference between a good design and a bad one. Make sure you give utmost importance to proportions in all of your works, be it posters, logos, products, characters, or even perspective sketches. Look at example 1 and 2. Just one mistake with the proportions in example 1 and the whole composition looks wrong. Speaking of proportions, it is important to mention the golden ratio. It is known to be a ratio which feels most natural and beautiful to the human eye. This ratio is 1.618:1. This ratio originates from nature. Look at our hands for example. The length of the palm with respect to the fingers is roughly 1.618:1. That is, it follows the golden ratio. Even the Eiffel Tower has utilized this ratio. The last principle we will see today is unity, which basically refers to arranging common objects in such a manner that it connects the whole composition. We will understand this concept through an example. Have a look at this composition. It follows asymmetric balance and has good variety and proportions. However, it looks a little loose. As soon as we add this circle, the whole composition feels united. The circle here is the common uniting element. Now, let us see an example of applying the principles of design to a 2D composition. This composition follows horizontal balance and variation. There is a certain rhythm developed through radiation of triangles in the figure on the right hand side. So, how can we make this composition better without adding any more elements? Simply rearranging these elements, the composition now follows emphasis and unity. The square becomes a dominant element, with the triangles being the subdominant element. Also, arranging the triangles around the square adds a sense of unity to the composition. As a synopsis, let's go through the principles of design again. We start with balance, then rhythm, emphasis, variety, movement, proportions, and finally unity. So, that's it for this video. See you in the next one.